Playtime in a video game, the aspect of how long a game takes to beat, on top of also how much content generally is in the game, and generally all measured by time. That is an important aspect people judge a game by, because people don't want to feel like they got basically spent more money on something that didn't have a lot to offer. So it's an important aspect to people, and we'll talk about this and the some examples when it comes to this one entire topic. Let me get this out of the way immediately. Yes, a runtime of a game does matter, especially on the price tag, but I feel like some point people get ridiculous levels. Like, I'll just say this. A game having more content for the sake of having content isn't inherently a good thing because, well, the content should be good, and if it's not good, then it can feel like padding or pointless. Like, here's a game I've seen people complain about, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. People complain about it because of the 3-day cycle, and how some side quests generally require you to do things on one day and then come at the next, and if you were to fail the quest at some point and you had to restart, which they feel like is having their time wasted, or some people phrase it, not respecting the player's time because of having to redo a side quest because you screwed up on one part of it, which is on which aspect comes to that kind of game, especially with a schedule system, where some people find the joy of finding the perfect route and everything in order to find these side quests and do everything, but other people do not and feel it is a waste of time and feel like it's just a game being stretched out longer than it needs to be, which, you know, that's an opinion, so to each their own how they handle that. But I'll then see the exact same people then praise something like a Final Fantasy Remake, which took a 6-7 hour long prologue and turned it into a 33-hour game, which has to stretch things out because you're trying to take a relatively short segment and then stretch it out way further than it should have been, which leads to a lot of moments that feel completely pointless and don't add anything. I remember, like a few recent months ago, there were some streamers playing Final Fantasy IX, and they explicitly mentioned a point from a remake they loved, which was, going through the whole entire freaking subway station, and then going through the whole entire thing with these giant light segments. They thought that was cool, a lot to the game. I thought that was pointless filler because it added nothing to the actual narrative and felt like it was just there to make things longer. To which they thought my opinion was actually nuts because of them, there's meaningful content. To me, it was not meaningful content. Different opinion. But then they thought if Final Fantasy V, my favorite entry, was stretched to the same regard, I would enjoy that. Which I say, hell no. I don't want Final Fantasy V to become something stretched out as heavy as some remake project. Like, no. That would not make it better, but to be generally good content. Next up, a game that was way too short, which is the big example, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. Ground Zeroes entirely being about a 2-hour-ish pretty much story segment, and then just 5 side missions, which could generally take you about maybe an extra hour, maybe just a half an hour or so to complete. There wasn't much to it at all, and that game was supposed to cost, I think, like $50 or so when it came out, but it got reduced to $40, but it's put on a platform. You know, on PC, PS4, Xbox One, it was like $40, and on PS4 360, it was like $30. So on a platform, it was more expensive, and that pissed people off. It highlighted to people that, yes, a game's runtime heavily matters. It wasn't until years later that I believe Kojima mentioned it was an experiment and trying to have a more episodic release, and that he didn't like the fact that people judged it based on playtime and not based on the quality of the experience. Sir, you are overhyping the quality of the experience of Ground Zeroes. But that's just people's breaking point. The fact that Ground Zeroes is good, I won't call it great, is good, but originally wanted to pay $50 and call it episodic. Bruh, the main game of MGS5 was like 80 hours or so, and that was a padded out game. I don't want to imagine what would happen if that was also a freaking episodic game. Hell, episodic game probably just be, that'd be like freaking 20 episodes at that point, my god. And then you have something like the Grand Theft Auto games, or typically people like to call them the forever games, where those games have so much side content, side stuff you can do, that you can keep going on and on and on. And I always wondered if people actually did that all that side content, the sports stuff, like, oh, people are totally playing tests of GTA 5, right, and just doing the main story. But I got people telling me that, no, to them, the appeal of GTA is the fact that it has so much different side content, so many different things you can do in the game, and that if it was purely just the main narrative, then they feel like it would be a way lesser game. So people clearly do enjoy that whole entire aspect of GTA 5, and it pretty much adds to their value of the game, and as their playtime. I mean, it's not the main story content, which, good for them. Good that they have fun with that, great for them. That shows how GTA 5 has to do that, even though I know there are people who do judge GTA purely based on the length of the main story scenario, because GTA 5 specifically, the main story scenario is very sizable. I think it's like 33 to 40 hours for that, which is very good. But there are some people who thought it was too short somehow, and that the game needed more content. It's like, huh? What? Huh? Huh? So that's one entire aspect when it comes to freaking thing where you can have a game with a good sizable amount of content, and yet though people will be like, it's not enough. I need more. I paid $60 for this. I need more. Then you have RPGs, which are stereotyped as being 5 billion hours to beat. Really, it depends on the game and everything, but there are many RPGs that are super long. So that is something you could go, yeah, which you would think at that point, people will then go, based on the other examples, more content equals good. But when it comes to RPGs, they're generally stigmatized as longer runtimes equal bad, equal laziness, equal bad writing. You may say, did you earlier bring up people praise for my certain remake? Yes. Hypocrisy exists. Yes, I know it does. So, if certain remake, make a Rebirth, we'll get a pass for that. A different game may not get a pass for that, solely because the person may not enjoy the content going on, which is why this entire thing is subjective. If you enjoy what's going on, then the runtime probably will be an issue. It's like I've seen people ironically say that they've played 100-hour RPGs and felt like the game was too short. It doesn't mean it's actually too short, they just liked it so much that they'd be willing to play more of it, get a sequel of it, more of that game, because they couldn't get enough for what they already played, which means they were very happy, very satisfied. I don't genuinely believe that the game should be like, oh, let's make it 200 hours and all that. But it is aspects of RPGs that they can have long run times, which people generally don't really factor to the, well, if you want to go things based on the which game will give you the most bang for your buck, then we all be playing RPGs now, wouldn't we? So that's that one aspect when it comes to playtime, which is RPGs can get demonized for their playtime. Other times, it can be so satisfying for people, they're like, I need more. Give me more, please. Now, this is all for single-player games and all that. That's for single-player games and everything. Now we gotta factor in multiplayer-only games, which, hypothetically, so long as there are people you can play against, even bots can play against, technically the game can never truly end. It only stops when you, the player, don't want to keep continuing. Which is as people don't already mention when it comes to multiplayer games. And generally people do pull up hours of multiplayer games. Like for me in Dead by Daylight, I put like freaking over 800 hours to the game. Man, I remember when putting in 100 hours to Team Fortress 2 was big. But it's a whole entire aspect where, yeah, that whole entire amount of hours in that game is a lot. And for some, can feel like a certain amount they would never achieve, because some people don't play an online game for that much. Like fighting games, people love playing fighting games, they'll play against human opponents, so they'll play online, however many matches they get, and even though it's the same game over and over, they will enjoy it, they will love it, because at that point, it's more about the player interactivity that makes their fun. So, runtime for that one doesn't really matter to people as long as they find opponents and that they enjoy fighting. And that, good for them, good because multiplayer games which generally get excluded from this topic of runtime and I need the most bang for my buck. At that point, the bang for your buck is however long you keep playing, or however long other people keep playing. Of course, none of this also factors in, like, I'm talking about this from the case of when a game is new, at its peak, and is at its maximum price. What about when a game drops in price? Do people adjust how they view things then? The answer is generally No. Like, I've seen people do say, hey, this much money I paid for this, it's a sweet spot. But for other people, not really. Like, don't buy a game that they probably bought for like $20, but don't judge it as if they bought the game at full price or something, or view it from that lens, because probably in the case of they want to empathize with more people who bought it at full price, even if they themselves didn't, or they want to judge it based on the scale of this was sold at full price at one point, let's judge it at that, and not judge it at the price tag in which they actually bought it, whether it be a sale price or a game being marked down, since some games do get permanent markdowns in their prices. But the question of, do you judge a game from then or that? That's like the whole time thing, different video I made about judging games based on when they're new, when they're later, and all that. But yeah, that's not much an aspect of judging things. Like, do you judge it the playtime when you bought it or not? Just when I saw 5 Ground Zeroes worth it when you can buy it for $5? Does that suddenly mean that, oh, I paid $5 and I got like a good game that has a runtime like 3 to 4 hours? That's a steal. Like, for some people, that'd be good for them. Or is it a steal for me when I bought Doom 2016 for $5? So what's our aspects? Another factor not put into this are games that are also designed to be replayable. Like, I've seen people bash games like the Devil May Cry franchise, Metal Gear Rising, Bayonetta, and all that, because those games are generally shorter than most games. Generally can be replayable. I mean, hypothetically, you could play an entire Devil May Cry game in one sitting. You spent the entire day doing it. So I'd say on average, probably like 8 to 10 hours for some people. Feel like paying a full price for a game like that is bad because of, oh, not long runtime. But those games are designed for you to replay them with higher difficulties, more abilities you unlock and everything, or new unlocks, new playable characters and stuff. So there are things to go through and reasons to go back and play through it. Granted, most people generally don't finish games, period. So asking someone to replay a game to get their money's worth can also feel like, even if there is content. On top of the idea that, hypothetically, you can replay any game long enough to get that amount of runtime out of a game. So for some people, they feel like, because of Devil May Cry, having a shorter runtime pretty much to them feels like the game is lesser quality, or that the game is a scam, which I can't change my mind from that one, even if I disagree and think Devil May Cry is freaking great, and I like going to difficulties, I get other characters. So, but I think that's people's hard-time mind because of runtime, that having a game like that have a short runtime, even if it does fit a purpose, because here's the thing, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is beloved now, but when that game was new, I remember so many people pretty much saying that the game's shorter runtime of 4 to 5 hours meant the game was bad, or the game was lesser quality because it was so short, despite how much variance and stuff you get from higher difficulties, all the hidden unlockables, all the VR missions and stuff like that. So there are people who base it solely based off runtime of a game, even if it's something that's like a more prestigious franchise or a genre that benefits from it, because I tell you this, Bayonetta 3 trying to go for an art campaign with 3 playable characters, they're not in any way, shape, or form making a better game than its previous entries at all. Some things you miss, like the fact that Bayonetta 1 and entire chapters are just boss fights, and it's like, man, I missed that, right? I'm gonna go through an entire level of Bayonetta 3 just to get to a boss. So there's that hunter aspect where, once again, grander does not always mean better, but in this case, for these examples, it could be preference that someone would take the more grander level of Bayonetta 3 over something like more of a Devil May Cry kind of thing. So that is a more preference thing. That's all I gotta say. I just want to ramble about playtesting games and how some people, once again, will view things solely based on the runtime and not much else. You should factor in the quality of the game, what you enjoyed from it, everything from it. But again, if a game is too egregiously short, yeah, it makes sense to complain. Just because a game is too egregiously long for no good reason, it also makes sense to complain and be upset about it. But there are some cases where people may not look at the bigger picture and just be like, this is bad for this or that reason because playtime and all that, when these things never factor into online games, because hypothetically you can keep playing over and over with other people, which does mean that an online game that has no player base would effectively be worthless as a result. So there is that factor, but it's all I wanted to ramble about. That's all. Play games.